There's no doubt that each of us are becoming more and more aware that we can see without the light of existence, mind and sensory awareness. And it's the stories, not just these stories, but the stories contained in every encounter in life that refine this seeing for us. But there's a story filled with symbols. So let's see what it brings for us. It's the story of a very rich merchant who had an only son. And like most only children, he was coddled and pampered and indulged to the extent that he became, like most coddled children, somewhat of a monster, demanding and of attention and fulfillment of his every desire. But one day the merchant with his son was out in the town, and it so happened that a troop of gypsies came by, and these gypsies had a pet monkey which danced and did performances to entertain the people who came. Now this little boy wanted that monkey, and even though his father resisted, and even the owner of the monkey, who said, "This is our means of support, he entertains the people and this is how we earn money." But of course the merchant was rich, and the clinking sound of gold convinced the gypsy to let go of the pet monkey. Now, this pet monkey became again like the little boy, coddled and pampered and fat and demanding. But it so happened that the wife of the merchant insisted that the monkey be taken with them, and so the monkey was taken and placed outside the store of the merchant. But it spat and snarled at all the customers who came. So the customers began to turn away from this particular store and go elsewhere. So the merchant's business started to fall away, and he began to realize this. So he brought the monkey home. But one day when he came home from his store, he found his wife crying in the kitchen with scratches all over her face. The monkey had attacked her. So the merchant was very, very angry. So he immediately took the monkey and disposed of it. Now the son was very, very distraught and put on his usual tantrums. But this was a moment of truth for the merchant. He said, "Enough is enough." And from that moment on, he took his young son in hand. He insisted that he go to the store every day to learn the ways of trade, and if he erred, he was punished. And very soon, the young boy's behavior began to change. He became very aware. He started to learn the business. He did what he was told. and so on, so that he eventually, in his teenage years, became quite a fine, caring, and efficient young man. Now one day, when the sun was out and about, there was a group of mourners come by with a casket. But the sons who were carrying the casket were weeping and crying. So the son asked these sons what was troubling them, and they related that they could not bury their father because they were very poor and he had died with debts, and his creditors would not allow him to be buried unless the debts were paid. But the young man took out his purse, and when he counted out the money, he had just enough to pay the dead man's debts. So very gratefully, the sons were able to go and bury their father. Now the son of the merchant came back to tell his story to the merchant. And the merchant said, "Ah, but the story is not finished. We must have a wake for the dead man." And so it was arranged. The merchant asked his wife to cook a sheep, and those who were relatives of the dead man were invited to come to this wake. Now it so happened that the merchant noted that a man, a bald-headed man, came through the doorway late in the festive wake that was occurring. And the merchant noted that he only ate the simple fare. No meat passed into his lips, just the rice and the dal. So afterwards, the merchant went to the bald man, and he said, "I note that you do not eat the meat, only the simple fare. Why?" And the bald man, who perhaps by now you will realize was the dead man himself, replied, "It is because I have only eaten simple fare as a poor man, and as the poor man my father, and the poor man my grandfather ate." Now the merchant was greatly touched by this, and he said to the bald man, "Will you come into my employ and mentor my son?" And this the bald man agreed to do. From that time on, the merchant's business expanded. They were even more prosperous. Now, it came about that the son, who had acquired the knowledge of the ways of business, said to his father, "I would like to go and explore the world with our trade." And this the father agreed to do, only if the son would allow himself to be accompanied by the bored man. And so it was agreed, and they set out far and wide to trade. Now it so happened that they came to an expanse of desert, and as they settled for the night, the bored man, fully awake day and night, noticed a light shining, and so taking his knife, he went to investigate, and he saw that it was a band of 40 robbers plotting to attack them. But the bored man made a sound which caused the robber chief to send one of his minions to investigate. So the bored man was able to dispose of them, each in their turn. Each robber who was sent to investigate was killed by the bored man. And so the next morning, taking the loot of the robbers, the bored man said to the merchant's son, "Let us move on. We have a bounty." And so they loaded onto the donkey that had belonged to the robbers the loot from them and set out again on their journey. But then they came to a city, and when they entered that city, it was found that every house was empty, until finally they came to the palace. And when they entered, there, sitting and bound to a chair, was a most beautiful maiden. Now it was asked of her, "Why is the town empty?" And she related that there was a ghoul who was devouring all. And they asked, "Why has it not devoured you?" And she replied, it was because of her beauty that each day the ghoul would return and revel in her beautiful being. Now, again it so happened that the ghoul returned while the bored man and the merchant's son were there. The sound of the great tread of footsteps and its roar as it entered and smelt the blood of human beings. But immediately the bored man took out his knife, and although the ghoul roared and came to him. The bald man was able to dispose of the ghoul, chopping off its head. Now again there was great treasure there. So again the bald man said, "Let us take this treasure and return from whence we came." And so again, laden with goods, they set out to return, of course, with the princess. But when they came close to the town in which the merchant, the son, lived, the bald man said to the young man, "You are like a brother to me, but now we must divide the loot." And so they did, half for the bald man and half for the merchant's son. But after the loot had been divided, the bald man said, "Now the princess is yours." But the merchant said, "No, you saved her. She must be yours." But the bald man said, "No, like the goods that have been divided, so too must we divide the maiden." So, taking his knife, he was about to cleave her in two, when suddenly, with great terror, she dropped from her loins 3 eggs, which the bald man immediately trampled on, disposing of the embryonic ghouls that the eggs contained. And then the bald man said to the merchant's son, "You saved me, and now I have made you safe. My work is done." And he turned and walked away. Now when the merchant's son came back, laden with goods, and told the story to his father, the merchant said, "Where is your mentor, the bald man?" And his son said, "He left me at the town gates." "Let us go and find him," said the merchant. So together they returned through the town gates and walked, taking them to the cemetery, where they saw the bald man kneeling beside a grave. And when they walked up to him, to touch him, to awaken him, he turned to dust. when every story, its characters, its symbols, and its archetypes are said to be aspects of our own psyche. What do you see? See with that which needs no light, mind, or sensory awareness to understand. Each element representing an aspect of our own being. Merchant, sun, monkey, the dead man, the robbers, the princess, the ghoul, the eggs. What do you